January is here, and that means it's time for Cramuary, where you take your big New Year's resolution-sized goal and accomplish it by cramming it into one super productive month. It is possible. But even if you plan to do your Cramuary goal in a different month this year, you can still be a part of my Cramuary by becoming a patron. I'm expanding upon 24 subjects that don't quite fit into the upcoming Your Creative Push book and offering those pieces of writing to you, my patrons. Not just to hopefully inspire you, but also to get your feedback and direction for upcoming YCP short episodes, the YouTube channel, and further content. Head to yourcreativepush.com/Patreon to support the show and to be a part of the upcoming, much more interactive Patreon experience. And thank you so much for your support. Your Creative Push, episode 318.
I love that process so much that I actually don't want it to end.
Nobody really knows, and nobody should really discount you or tell you can't do something.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngmin Brown, and my guests today are Tara Roskell and Sandra Busby. Sandra and Tara are the co-founders of Kickin' the Creatives, the website that offers creative challenges throughout the year, as well as a bustling community that supports each other in those challenges. They've both been on the podcast before, but they come back on today to talk about, first of all, what it was like to meet in person for the first time, but also to talk about what Kickin' the Creatives is all about. They talk about finding ways to detach yourself from your work and also how to handle the insecurities that arise from listening to your own recorded voice, a problem that I definitely have dealt with before and continue to deal with. They also share what they've learned from the members of their community with their various challenges and discussions, and also the encouragement that is rampant in their Facebook group, as well as some of the ways that the members of their community have collaborated and helped one another. They also share what they've learned from the challenges that they have participated in and some of the unexpected things that came out of them, as well as some of the resistances that these challenges have helped them with, such as the fear of drawing in public and also overworking your sketches because you love the process of drawing so much. Sandra and Tara also share some of the upcoming challenges that they have planned for next year, as well as some of the lessons that they learned this year from some of their guests like Danny Gregory, Joanna Penn, Tracy Fletcher King, and Jake Parker, like getting past imposter syndrome and dealing with deep and shallow creative blocks. As always, I had such a great time talking with Sandra and Tara, and it was such a pleasure to hear about their experience of starting a community and starting a podcast, one that I think you all can benefit from so much. So please enjoy my conversation with my friends, Sandra Busby and Tara Roskell. Enjoy. Sandra and Tara, welcome back to Your Creative Push.
Thank you very much.
It's great to be here.
Hey, it's great to have you on the show. I feel like we haven't not talked for a long time, even though we kind of have not, because now you have a podcast that I love, and it's like you are in my earbuds all the time now, Kickin' the Creatives. So maybe you could start by talking about Kickin' the Creatives. You've both been on the show before and talked about your own creative process, and I've been on your podcast before and mentioned it. But for anybody that hasn't checked out your podcast, which I think is a lovely kind of sister podcast to Your Creative Push, can you kind of inform them about what it's all about?
Well, it wouldn't exist if it wasn't for you, Youngman. That's for a start. Because me and Sandra met through your Facebook group, which was great.
Yay!
Yeah. And basically, it's a website where you can take part in creative challenges all year round. We share details and links to some of the big creative challenges, like there's a 100-day project and Jake Parker's Inktober. And we also host 4 challenges of our own a month. We've got a Facebook group, and as you mentioned, we've got a podcast. And on that podcast, we just talk about sort of creative issues, art tips, and then anything else that pops into our head, really, don't we, Sandra?
Yeah, it can go off on a bit of a tangent sometimes.
Yeah, just a little bit. And I think the reason we started it was because Sandra and I had both done creative challenges in the past, and we really saw how rewarding they were. But probably what it really got it started, we started doing little mini creative challenges ourselves. And one of those, I don't know if you heard about this, young man, was to test out the theory that alcohol makes me more creative. Yeah, I don't know if you saw that one.
I did. I made sure that I tuned into that one.
That was so embarrassing. I can't believe we did it.
So we set ourselves these little challenges, such as drawing a wine bottle, writing a poem, coming up with ideas. And it was after we'd had 3 units of alcohol basically before, although Sandra went a bit wrong and had more than she intended.
I had 6. I miscalculated.
You misdosed?
I was trolleyed half the time.
That's awesome.
And I think that's what sparked the idea, though, wasn't it, of creating the site? Because we both really enjoyed doing that, but there didn't ever seem to be like any one place where all of the most popular ones were housed under one umbrella. And quite often in the past, I only realised there was a challenge going on because there were so many weird hashtags suddenly flying around, and maybe I'd go into it a week late, so I was always late. Yeah, so we kind of really enjoyed that part of the challenge, didn't we? Just sort of giving each other little challenges. And then I think Tara sort of said, I think it was your idea, really, wasn't it, to come up with a website?
Yeah, I think so.
And lay it out kind of like a calendar so that you can click on any month on the calendar, then it shows you exactly what challenges are coming up for that month, whether that's our own challenges or the most popular external ones, such as Tara said, Inktober, for example. So, we've tried to create a variety of challenges so there's something to suit everyone, however busy their lives are. But I think probably the most popular ones are quick kicks challenges. They're the ones that can be done in sort of like 5 minutes to 15 minutes a day. And they're really, really valuable. But we've tried to make it fun, but those little challenges actually are so valuable. And they might just look like, oh, well, that sounds like fun. And yeah, that is true. But there's a purpose behind every one of them. They're not just designed to help build that creative habit, but they're also designed to really improve your skills over time. So we started that. We were talking about it in probably November last year, weren't we, Tara?
Yeah, and I think I was going to do something a lot smaller originally. So we were talking, and you said, no, let's go for it and get the whole year planned out, didn't you? So it was a big push to sort of get that all done. And you'd been co-hosting some of the podcasts I had at the time, hadn't you? And then we thought it makes sense if we just put this all into one and make this one big thing, really. And I think that worked really well. People seem to like us together for some weird reason.
Yeah, we got some really nice messages from people. Yeah. And it's been fun. And it's been a hard slog, though. I had no idea. I don't think either of us knew how much work it would be. Did we, Tara? But
no.
Definitely worth it.
Well, sometimes it's important to not know how much work it's going to be. Otherwise, you just won't. Right, exactly.
Yeah, you'd never do it. But we fit it in, and somehow we just keep giving ourselves more to do, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, we even want to do more stuff next year, which we've been talking about, maybe doing some YouTube videos, that sort of thing, some tutorials. Sandra's got some very weird ideas on that. But yeah.
We're a bad influence on each other, really.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think that's why it works, because we're both quite childish at times.
Speak yourself.
And we're quite a bad influence on each other, but in a really good way. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's great, because that's like how the whole thing started. And I think it's so important to have a creative buddy, or somebody that you can challenge, and somebody that you can also like have a laugh with. You know what I mean? It's one thing to challenge yourself and do the work, but then who are you going to show it to? Who are you going to maybe have a friendly competition with? You know, and then it's great that you took that and what you were doing together and kind of integrated it into a whole website, a whole thing that other people can join in and do with you.
Well, Tara, obviously, the way it initially we met, obviously, as Tara said, was through your Creative Push Facebook page. But I think, Tara, you'd heard me being interviewed with Mike, hadn't you?
Yeah.
And then you reached out to me to say, do you want to come on my show? Because Tara had her own at the time. And it was just a chemistry straight away. I don't know. I think we carried on talking probably for about half an hour after the interview stopped, didn't we? And then we just kind of kept in contact. And that's really the way it started. It was just that instant
rapport, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was. It's just a connection.
Love at first sight, I think they call it.
well. You I think jokingly, one of us said, "Oh, if you've ever fancied doing a co-hosted show," and I don't know if it was you that was. I think, oh no, I suggested you should have your own show.
I said, "Are you mad? There's no way in a million years I would ever do that." And then I think I said, I can understand people who do joint ones because that's not so bad, but there's no way. I mean, I still wouldn't. Not in a million years would I ever do that. But so I think then you said, "Oh, if you've ever fancy doing one, let me know." And I said, "Oh, well, I'd have a go." And then that's how it started.
Yeah.
And that was obviously all down to you, Mike.
Yeah, well,
your fault.
I'm happy to be a matchmaker.
Well, it's weird, isn't it, to think that actually if it wasn't for you, that our site wouldn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, without getting like an ego or anything like that, it's just like for anybody, like you don't know the kind of butterfly effect, like the ways in which the things that you create will affect people that you might not even find out about. You probably won't find out about 99% of the ways that you affect your audience or the other people and make them spur them into their own kind of creation. And it's kind of fun, and I'm selfishly very happy right now hearing about that, hearing that, this whole, not just podcast, not just website, but community is forming on the side because of just this one little, spark of an idea that I had a long time ago. It's awesome.
Well, you should do an episode one day of all your successes, the people that have had things change for them because obviously of your creative push.
That's in the works too. You guys mentioned that you're doing a YouTube channel in February. That's my goal as well.
Yeah.
So
great.
Videos to come.
So what are you going to do on the videos? Are they going to be interviews or?
No, so I'm going to keep the podcast the same and then do short little kind of lessons that I've learned. Because as I started writing the Your Creative Push book, I've had things that don't really fit in, but they're still like great. I'm going to use them as blog posts. But I'm like, I also want to start this YouTube channel. So not only are those blog posts or short things going to be kind of their own little entity, but also going to turn them into YouTube videos and different little pieces of information. So
when's your book out?
I don't know yet. The whole goal last year for the Cramuary challenge was to write the whole book. And then I decided that that's no fun way to write my first book. And so I've been spreading it out and kind of enjoying the process. I'd say it's probably like a little bit more than half done now. So probably by the end of 2019.
Brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, it's nerve-wracking, but it's fun. It's been a fun process. I wanted to talk to you guys about, you just mentioned that you met through the podcast, but what was it like meeting in real life for the first time?
Oh, it was so weird. And I actually...
Thanks!
It was fun but weird. Does that make it sound better? Because we've been talking for so long and it's almost like it becomes this big thing. I don't know if you know what I mean, but it's like... Mm-hmm. You don't quite know what to expect. And I'm thinking, what if she doesn't like me? Mm-hmm. She sees me in person. And I was really nervous because I knew about it. But Sandra and her husband were coming to stay at a hotel fairly near me. Me and my partner were going to meet up with them. But Sandra had absolutely no idea about it. It was a complete surprise. Yeah. Because Paul had arranged it all as a surprise for you, hadn't he, Sandra?
Yeah.
Aww. Poor.
I know.
and even when I sort of got in the bar to meet her, because it's funny because she's been texting me all day saying, I think I might be somewhere near you. And I was going, oh, really? Where? And I was thinking, she's definitely clocked on. But she hadn't. And I actually wore my sunglasses in the pub thinking she'd never know it was me. And you did straight away, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, like Tara said, I knew nothing. I was completely oblivious to the whole thing. But basically, I think Paul had clocked on that I probably talked to Tara more than I talked to anyone I know.
Yeah.
I mean, even trying to find a text that I've sent to Tara or she's sent to me with some information on is just like looking for a needle in a haystack. I reckon it's probably 10, 12 times a day sometimes and more. And I think he kind of realised that the rapport we'd built and he decided that it would be great for us to actually meet in the flesh. And I think I'd never really worried about it. I always assumed we would meet. But I think it was when we were interviewing Danny Gregory and he said something that made me think, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought of it like that. And I think he said something like, have you two met? And we said, not yet. We've spoken online. Obviously, we speak all the time, but we haven't yet met in the flesh. And he said, you really need to do that because that'll become something really big otherwise. And I suddenly thought, oh, maybe he's right. And then I sort of thought, I'd never really thought about it like that. But anyway, I'm really glad that it happened the way it did because I didn't have a chance to be nervous at all. 1 minute I was standing in a bar waiting for a drink, and the next Tara's standing behind me, and I was so shocked. The thing is, I honestly thought it was a complete coincidence, which is funny really because, England is a huge place.
Right.
But basically Paul had been plotting to arrange a surprise meeting, as I said. But as far as I was concerned, we were going for a spa weekend. That's what he told me. Mm-hmm. And I did think it was a bit weird that we were going so far away. But aside from that, I had no idea what was going on until we got, I didn't have any idea at all, but we got to the sign that says Northamptonshire. And I said to Paul, I'm sure Tara lives in Northamptonshire, but Northamptonshire is a county. It's massive. So as far as I was concerned, she could still be 2 hours away. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So, but yeah, when we actually met, I mean, it could have worked one of two ways, I suppose, couldn't it? But Tara was exactly the same as what I had expected. And I hope the same applied the other way round. But I'm pretty sure that everyone in the room had earache because I don't reckon we stopped squealing from about, the moment we met till about 1 a.m, isn't it? Something like that.
Something like that,
maybe.
Yeah.
And we've actually met each other again since. We had a day out in London a couple of weeks ago and had a day out sketching, and we're planning another one early next year. So yeah, it's been really great fun, really good fun.
What did that, doing that, seeing each other in the flesh, do for your relationship then going forward and kind of working on the podcast and website?
I think it made it real, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, we'd seen each other. You're actually a person beyond just this voice and a profile picture, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Although I had seen you before on your phone, hadn't I?
When was that?
And then you'd seen me once when I ducked. Now that's actually since, isn't it, when I ducked because I hadn't brushed my hair.
I think I accidentally FaceTimed Tara and she fell to the floor and crawled under her desk. It's funny.
That is funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
yeah, I think Tara's right. It's about, it's very different talking to someone online. It can be very different talking to someone online, and then in the flesh they can be a completely different person. But that chemistry was still very much there, which was great. It was just easy. It wasn't like I was meeting someone for the first time. It was like I was meeting someone I'd already known for a long time. So, yeah.
And I think people keep saying, and I know you had your daughter said that we're both as slightly mad. That's not
what she said. She said something far worse than that. We did our sketching weekend in London a couple of weeks ago, and we'd put a photograph on Facebook. I think I was wearing a disguise, and so were you. And
what were you wearing?
I was wearing a horse's head.
Oh my god!
And you were wearing a fake moustache with a
woolly hat,
baseball cap. Yeah. And Adele, my daughter Adele, she said, I saw that Facebook post you made. She said, you two, she said, you're a match made in heaven. She said, you're both as weird as each other. I was like, oh, thanks.
Oh, perfect. Oh, man. Well, I love this because I've been thinking about relationships that you build online a lot recently. And it's this kind of intangible thing, like you said, just a face, a voice, and just that's it. But you can build such a great relationship, or you can build a great thing like Kicking the Creatives, like a community, a website. You can build so much just from the internet, just from talking, and these relationships are real. So for anybody out there, if you do have these kinds of relationships, even if it's just, texting back and forth or encouraging each other, find a way to meet in real life to solidify it, to make it a real tangible thing, because otherwise it's it just feels weird and it's hard to quantify. But I think we need to find a way to define these relationships and these important relationships that we build online.
I think what's good about online as well is that you can find people that really you've got a connection with, as in you really like the same things, where it's much harder, locally to you, unless there happens to be, loads of groups if you're in a big city. I mean, I don't know hardly anybody sort of around me that's really arty. And so online is the only real way to do that for me.
Same here. I don't know anybody around me that's a podcaster or a writer or anything like that. I think it comes down to joining writing groups or whatnot. For me, I know I'm relocating soon, so it's like, why am I going to do that? But the internet, you can go anywhere in the world and you can still have those same friends and still just jump on Skype and talk and what have you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they almost become as important. Well, they do become as important as the people in your life, because quite often there's people online that, are there when other people around you aren't, or they understand what you're going through when somebody else doesn't. I don't know. There's all sorts of connections you can make. I think one of the highlights as well for me for doing this is there are some people that it's much harder to meet. You've interviewed Tracy Fletcher King, haven't you?
I did, yeah.
Mike? Yeah, and Tracy and I had been in contact for probably a few years online, and it gave me the opportunity to actually finally talk to her, even though I couldn't meet her because she's in Australia and I'm in the UK. I'd love to one day, but it was lovely to actually be able to have a conversation with her over the phone instead of just behind a keyboard, because when you're behind a keyboard as well, you've got time, haven't you, to think about what you're going to say.
Right.
And it's always nice to see the person that they really are, the human side of them, where they actually do trip over their words or get nervous, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And just hearing the inflection and the mistakes, it makes them human.
Yeah.
I always find as well that you can't always tell if you're going to get on with someone from, when you're just typing online.
Yeah.
But then as soon as you you go on and speak, use your voice and speak, you can tell if you sort of click or not. It's totally different.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Some people are very bad communicators, like via text or writing, like my dad, for instance. He is the worst texter. I always tell him, I'm like, Dad, you need to step up your texting game, because he just does the bare minimum words. And I always think that something's wrong or that he's mad at me. And perhaps that's just me. But he's very liberal using the ellipsis. So he says, all right, talk to you soon, ... Just like, what does that mean, Dad? She's like, oh, I'll talk to you soon. I'm like, no, you can't do that. I think you're mad at me, Dad.
At least your dad had his phone on. Mine always has his phone switched off.
That's my mom.
And Tara, though, it's quite funny because sometimes you read texts in a different context than they're meant. I don't, but with Tara, but I know that you even self-admit, don't you, Tara, that you're quite blunt.
Oh yeah, I'm terrible.
You're a busy person, so you're blunt. Now, some people could be offended by a one-word answer, but I'm not, because I know how we're both really busy doing this thing, and I just find it funny. And she says, oh gosh, was I really blunt a minute ago? I'm like, yeah, but it's fine. I'm not bothered. We just sort of, I think it's just that at ease, when you've met someone in the flesh, you know what they're like. So when you only speak to someone online, it's harder to get a real sense of who they are.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, you mentioned that you have had some, I don't want to say issues, but maybe some challenges that have occurred in your first year of Kicking the Creatives. So could you maybe talk about some of the challenges that you've encountered?
Do you want to go for this one, Sandra, or me?
I don't mind. I can think of one straight away.
Okay, go on then.
Well, first of all, the obvious one, I've had to learn how to edit podcasts, and which is a nightmare when I'm in it. I realised that when I'd been on yours, I thought, God, poor Mike, he must have had a nightmare.
Oh, no.
I realised I talk too much, way too much. So there's that. But also, of course, having to listen to myself has come with its own problems. Imposter syndrome, of course, that's the first one, because you can't help it. I mean, I am not one that wants to listen to myself at all. I really, really don't. And the only reason I think I took on the podcast editing is because, really, Tara, you're the techie person, aren't you? And I'm not. I mean, yeah. You've got a graphic design background, so all of that sort of side of things, she does all of that, and I don't. So obviously, the podcast is another big thing. So I took that on. But yeah, that's hard, because you do have to listen back to yourself, and sometimes I find that really cringy. And the only reason I've learned how to deal with that better now is to detach and pretend it's not me, pretend it's someone else. Do you know what I mean?
I literally just wrote that down to mention the word detach. Yeah, it's so important.
It's so true. It's a bit like, I sort of liken it to how I look at my own art.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'll paint a painting and I'm so self-critical of it. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them. And then what I'll do is sometimes I'll detach from it completely. And the way I'll do that is I'll look at it in a mirror, or I'll look at it on a computer. And I almost look at it as if it's not mine. So I'll think, well, if I came across this on Instagram, what would I really think? And that's when I learned to see it as, it's not me, it's a piece of art. It is me, but it's there's some way, I don't know how it works, but your brain detaches from it. And that's how I do that with the editing now. I've learned to it's just a voice. And sometimes I say some things that, are quite useful, I hope.
Right.
Sometimes I say some other things that really aren't, but yeah, it's quite interesting how some of our podcast episodes go. What about you, Tara? What have your...
We've had, our group overall has been brilliant, so we can't fault them, but of course you always get the odd bad apple that insists on just kind of self-promoting, even though you've not said it. And we did have, do you remember right at the beginning, Sandra, we had some pictures posted that were a bit explicit.
Nice.
But kind of they weren't explicit as in if you looked at them first you didn't really know they were explicit, and then I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, hang on a minute.
Sneaky.
And then I was saying to Sandra, is this what I think it is? And then your husband spotted another one, but actually we think that was innocent.
Yeah, there was one
that
was really, I think, genuinely innocent, but what it actually looked like was so hysterically funny. We actually had to remove it though from the group because we thought if anyone sees what we're seeing, then that's that doesn't look very good.
Did you save it so I can see?
Oh, we should have done, shouldn't we? No, we didn't.
Yeah.
No, it's long gone. But no, the group's been fantastic. I mean, considering the amount it's grown in the year, I don't even know what the number is now.
We were on 400 and something. I'm not quite
edging
sure.
Towards,
I think maybe 500 and something.
Yeah, I think we're closer to 500. And do you know what? There's not a single bad person in the group. They're all so lovely. But it's hard sometimes to keep on top of that. And you know this, Mike, don't you? Because you've got a Facebook group. And, the bigger it gets, the harder it is to make sure that nothing's going on that, shouldn't be going on. But we know we've got a few that have been with us from the very beginning, and they do keep an eye, don't they, if something's not quite right. So it's nice.
Yeah, and then by mistake, someone reported something as well, didn't they? Fingers getting over snappy on the keyboard, not meaning to report
Tara
something.
texted me and said, somebody's reported this Facebook post. Am I missing something? And all it was is our prompt for that day was culture. And somebody had put a mushroom in one of those Petri dishes. And she said, what do you think the report could be? Could it be sort of drugs related? And I looked at it and I thought, no, I don't think it is. But it turns out this person had literally just pressed it by accident. So that was quite funny.
Well, that's the great thing about having that kind of community, and the more it builds and the more better people you get in there, it is self-policing. I remember in our group, actually, somebody was like, why isn't Youngman even on this group? He doesn't say anything, like,
I remember
blah, blah,
that.
blah. And then Tara, actually, you
too.
stepped up and or a lot of people stepped up and they're like, no, it's Mike. Like, he's here all the time. I obviously I'm not in there as much as I like to be, or I can't comment on everything. But then he realized his mistake. And then Tara, you were like, why don't you apologize? Which was so nice. It's so nice to have people stand up for you,
I think some people he just didn't connect you to being Mike and Youngman, did he? That was the problem.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, the I've had similar experiences with the group, and also similar experiences with the editing, and the detaching is very important. I found it easy, as I'm editing, to detach myself, but then when I listen back to, if I want to listen back to a whole episode, especially if it was from a year ago or more, it's always cringeworthy. But a pro tip: if you speed it up 1.5x, like, or even 2x, you sound like a genius. You sound like a different person. So it's easy to detach yourself that way.
I was going to say, if you meant like properly to make it sound better, I don't think Tara would want to speed me up at all.
Okay, maybe slow it down then.
Yes,
0.5x.
That's a good idea. We could slow me down. No, I think the whole thing has been a big surprise. The whole thing has been a challenge. It's been a huge learning curve, and we've had to face our own, what's the word I'm looking for? Not imperfections, no one's perfect, but do you know what I mean? Those things that you least like about yourself, you're kind of having to hear them. I hate hearing myself on video, on a tape, and I hate seeing myself on video, but I'm having to do those things now. And in a way, I think it's a really good thing because it gets you out of your comfort zone, makes you do things that you wouldn't. And talking to people by way of, I mean, I remember, Mike, when you asked me to come on your podcast, I was absolutely terrified. I mean, I can't even tell you how terrified I was. And even listening back to the first episodes that Tara and I did together, I absolutely hate listening. I can't bear it. But like you say, you get better, don't you, as you go along? You get more natural. You don't feel such like a rabbit in the headlights. You just do it. And I think it just takes time, doesn't it?
It's those mannerisms as well. You start noticing, because me and Sandra, we kept on saying literally. And then as soon as you pick up that you said it, every time you say it, you're trying to stop yourself, and then it all becomes unnatural when you're trying to talk. Yeah, you were
saying literally all the time, and I was saying 100 million times every episode. It's terrible. I don't know. And it's
tough.
Yeah, because you had a thing about saying like, didn't you, Mike?
I still do.
It's just you, so, it's fine. But it's when you're looking at yourself that's when you sort of see it. You don't see it with someone else, but when it's yourself, you notice these things.
Absolutely, yeah. You think that the whole world is just, oh my God, he said like again. Oh, let me start a count. But nobody cares. It's just, and I've learned to let go of a lot of stuff too, and I'm sure everybody does as you continue on. You just realize that's just the way I talk. The idea that I'm trying to communicate is still relatively there, and that's all that really matters.
Yeah.
So we talked about your community, and like I said, you guys are killing it with your community. It's growing and growing and growing. What have you learned from your listeners and the members of your group, the people that are doing the challenges? What has that kind of taught you?
Well, I've really loved seeing some of our groups suddenly discovered that they're really good at a type of art or a creative challenge that they've not tried before. We've got one woman in our group, and she's sort of learning to draw, but she started doing one of our challenges, Abstract Art April, I think that's what it was called. And she started painting abstract, which she'd never done before, and absolutely loved it. And she created these pieces, and I said, I would have that on my wall. They were so nice. But if she hadn't tried that challenge, she would never have known that she was good at that. And so it kind of teaches you that unless you try it, you don't know if you're good or not at that thing, even if it takes you a little while to learn it. We've also had people trying to write poetry for the first time, and also people discovering they like printmaking. Again, it's perhaps something they wouldn't have done otherwise, but by doing the challenge, it sort of pushes them forward to try something new.
Yeah, and we've also had some really lovely messages as well from people who have been struggling with dementia to people who are recovering from strokes. We've got some that are dealing with grief or depression, and they've written to us and said, how much the challenges have helped them. And in fact, I think on one post we said, somebody said, oh, I'm behind. And we said, don't worry. The main thing is you're doing more than you would have done. And she said, no, I need the rules, because she was the one with dementia. She said, I need these rules. They really help me. And that's so heartwarming when you hear that from people who were actually having some kind of an effect on, which is great. But not just that, but also being part of such a really nice supportive group. I mean, we've been so lucky, as I said, everyone's just really nice and encouraging. And we're literally watching new friendships form in front of our eyes. And I think because it's a closed group, everyone understands that nothing's going to be seen outside of the group. So it feels like a safe place for them to share. Of course, there's an accountability factor as well. So people sort of feel that they need to post because other people are waiting for their posts. But I think it's made me realise even more just how valuable those challenges can be. I mean, we've been going for a year now virtually, and some of our members have been with us right from the very beginning. And honestly, the improvements we've seen in their drawing skills from when they started to now has been incredible, really. And that's just by putting a little bit of time into something every day. And that's been really interesting to watch. And maybe they don't even realise it, but if they were to look back, they'd be quite surprised, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think as well, some of our group, when you post a bit of work in there, some people, they may not be the best artists in the world, but everybody encourages them for doing what they've done. You know, if they want to ask for advice on doing something, they can, but otherwise people aren't going to go in there and say, oh, you know, this is awful. I think some groups are quite harsh like that, and ours is more about encouraging someone. But I say, if they do want someone to give them advice, you know, they will.
And everyone's at such different levels as well. You've got people who are just starting to learn to draw now in their 50s or older. And then you've got other people that have been drawing for years and have got an established style. But nobody cares. Everyone understands that everyone's at a different stage. And that's the only difference. It's nothing to do with talent. It's about how much experience you've got. And to be honest, if anyone we felt was harsh, we just wouldn't have them in the group anyway.
Right. Yeah, I love all that. And the cool thing is the improvement, you know, and if you notice the improvement, there's definitely improvement happening over just a single year. And sometimes it's important to remind each other, hey, wow, like look what you've done. Because when you're in the mix, when you're doing it yourself, you don't really see it because you're on that timeline. So just to give that like gentle nudge, be like, hey, go back and look at your old stuff, even though it feels cringeworthy. Like the reason it feels cringeworthy is because you've come so far in just a year. Like it's so helpful.
Yeah. And we've done some challenges of our own, haven't we, Tara? We've been joining in. I mean,
oh yeah. I mean, I discovered that I loved drawing faces through doing our challenges, and we wrote a children's book together as well, haven't we? We haven't published it or anything yet, but we did it in a slightly unusual way. We did it for February Fables, which is one of our challenges, and we wrote 250 words, but then would stop exactly on that and then pass it to the other person. So neither of us really had a clue what was going to happen with this story. And I think you loved doing this, didn't you, Sandra?
I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, our actual challenge was to write the first draft of a children's book or a fairy tale in 1 month. But realistically, the amount of work we were doing behind the scenes for Kicking the Creators, we couldn't have done that. But I really love writing. It's one of my favourite things. And so we decided we'd do it that way, where we just literally write a co-written book. And it's interesting, really, because we do write in a similar way, or we certainly have the same kind of we kind of visualize things in the same way, I think, maybe. So it was quite good, actually, because you would never know that two people had written this book. But I mean, our story went on for several months.
So, I was trying to stop it. Yeah. I must admit. I kept trying to round it up, and Sandra was like, no, we're still going with it.
I'm still editing it. I'm editing the first draft as we speak. And but I'm hopeful that we'll get it out there before next Christmas. But there was also another guy in our group, and he took part in the February Fables Challenge, and he was posting snippets of his book throughout the month. And it was really funny because it was supposed to be a children's book, but it seemed to kind of develop into something else, which we realised when somehow his characters ended up in a pole dancing club. And I said, are you sure this is a children's book? It ended up to be evolved into a young adult's book, but that's fine. I mean, he wrote a book, and not only that, but he went on to self-publish it. So that was really great to see, and it was really enjoyable to see people taking part in all those kind of things. But it's only right that we should also take part in them sometimes. But as I said, the trouble is, it's sometimes when you're trying to build something like this, it's actually harder to do. We certainly couldn't do all of the challenges because you'd never have time. But yeah, we pick wisely. You probably are better at that than me, Tara. You tend to do more than I do.
I think it's because you're doing your painting, so you want to make time to do your painting, whereas I don't paint, so my thing is sketching. So most of the challenges are more sort of tailored probably to the thing I do anyway. Yeah,
and I don't want to stop painting. I've got to put the time into that still, and so that probably makes sense.
But also it's sort of a slight irony that doing Kicking the Creatives actually stops you doing so much creative work in that sense. Yeah, which I'm sure, Mike.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you pick up this thing and it becomes this big thing that you didn't realize all the administrative stuff and all that. And then you're like, oh, wow, when's the last time I wrote? When's the last time I did something, quote, creative? But it's an important thing, you know?
Yeah, and I think one of the main reasons we wanted to start this is because I think, as I spoke to you, didn't I, in our interview, and I was terrified of starting to sketch when I very first got my sketchbook. And I remember that fear, and it was all about the end result, you know, what's it going to look like? And one of our main aims, I think, has been to take away that fear. And we designed a lot of challenges that will make people feel a lot less concerned about that outcome, such as like drawing with your left hand, for example, or drawing with a limited number of strokes. And like I said earlier, they might just sound like a bit of fun, but these simple exercises, when they're done on a daily basis, they can really improve your drawing skills, but they take those sort of high expectations away, because you've automatically got an excuse for the result to be bad, because it's not going to be good. It's you know, if you're drawing with your non-dominant hand, it's not going to be great. But the challenge is, you know, in itself is valuable regardless of the result.
I mean, I actually made you do this, didn't I, when we were in London, Sandra? Because one of our challenges was 5-minute march, which is to sketch really quickly. But when we were in London, I made Sandra, I didn't make you, but...
Yes, you did.
I made Sandra do time drawings. We were in the V&A Museum and they had a load of statues there. And I said, come on, let's try doing some time drawings. And so we'll do like 2 minutes. And she's go, what? 2 minutes? And so, yeah, we were trying to draw these really quick. Again, because that takes away your preciousness. It's probably like writing. If you throw in your first draft without editing as you go, it just sort of gets out there on the page. And it's the same with drawing quickly. You can't worry about light and shade. You just got to get that basic contour done. And you loved it, didn't you?
Well, no, I hated it. The things, basically the two of us are really different. We're at other ends of the scale in the way that we do things, because I've always said, oh, I'm too precious and I'm too careful, and you're always the opposite, saying, oh, I'm too loose and I want to care more. Yeah. So in a way, we're both at the other end of the scale. But yeah, I mean, we were standing there in this museum with all these amazing sculptures, and I was standing there with my biro on my sketch pad, sort of doing delicate little drawings and hatching and all the rest of it. And then Tara comes over and shoves a big fat chunky marker in my hand and says, right, you've got 2 minutes, use this. And I'm like, I just don't know. I can't, how can I possibly produce anything decent with this pen? And but that's actually a good thing, because I did try it, and actually a couple of them you thought were good. I think they're hideous. But on the other hand, you know, Tara's sitting there saying, oh, this is terrible what I've done, and I love what she's done. I look and think, oh, she's filled 2 pages of stuff when all the time I've been working on this one sculpture. So that's another way we're quite good for each other, but also these challenges are good to do, because there is no way that ordinarily I would ever draw with a big fat chunky marker or a brush pen in 2 minutes. I just wouldn't do that.
Right. Well, and just partaking in many different challenges just gives you practice of putting yourself in that uncomfortable position and putting yourself in that position, like you said, to not have those expectations, so that, you know, the bigger successes can kind of sneak up on you, or you can find, you know, a children's book that you want to continue with, you know what I mean? Because you don't have that expectation, then you can kind of free up the, like you said, like wondering, what is this going to become? Like, why am I doing this? Like, who cares? You're just participating in something different.
That's where the book, I think, was so interesting, because obviously we were both writing I'd write 150 words, 250 words, and then I'd stop at a, you know, and or whatever, and pass it to Tara. And then I was kind of expecting it would go one way, and I'd get it back and it had gone a completely different direction. I was like, Tara, what on earth? Why is this character doing this? And it's really fascinating. It's really good. It's a great sort of thing to do. Other things we've done as well. We did obviously this London trip, and I'm not one to sketch in public, really. I don't enjoy sketching in public, or at least I didn't think I did. And if I did, it was always, you know, in a darkened corner somewhere, you know, in disguise, peeping from behind a wall. I'd never sort of get myself out there and do it. But I mean, in that museum, we were just standing in the middle of a walkway in front of absolutely everybody, and somehow it kind of almost cured me there and then of that fear. And now I think I could do it again and again, and I don't think it would bother me. But that first time was so scary. But
Yeah, although you did say to me, didn't you? See, nobody cared and nobody bothered us, which you were sort of surprised about. But I'd actually, meanwhile, I'd been sitting there at the side at one point. They had a bench at the side, and I was actually drawing the back of Sandra, drawing a statue. And this woman and her little child, and the child must have only been about 3, she'd kind of grabbed her child, pulled him in front of me, so he was practically touching my leg, sitting on the chair, and then she had hovered over me. And she said, and I thought first she wanted to sit on the bench, and I was sort of moving a coat up. And she goes, "Oh, no, we want to watch you." I'm like, "I'm really sorry, but I can't draw with you watching me," because they were literally leaning against my leg.
Oh my God.
That would have been my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
It was so funny because I walked back oblivious to all this saying, "Oh, it's great. Nobody cares at all." And Tara looks traumatised saying, "Oh, this woman, she was just literally hanging over my shoulder." I'm so glad that wasn't me.
Good for you.
Yeah, me. I was proud of myself.
I love it. Were there any other challenges you wanted to mention?
What else? We've got loads of different ones coming up next year. Can we tell you a couple of those?
Yeah. So January, February?
Well, January, we've got Art Journal January, which is to
that
create...
was really popular last year as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's just to create a journal page every day. And we did that for the first time last year. So you can, put writing in there, drawings, everything. And then we're doing February Fables again, which is the one we just told you about that me and Sandra did, where you come up with a children's story.
Are you going to write your sequel in February?
Well, I would.
Oh,
Nice.
I'm not sure I can take it. I've got a much shorter attention span than Sandra, so I like projects to be like I like sketching, whereas Sandra likes doing really finished, precise pieces. So I've got quite a small little time zone, so I start getting bored. Whereas you love it, don't you?
Oh, I could go on forever, yeah. And and we were talking about this, weren't we, when we were drawing in the museum, and it kind of occurred to me, I think the reason that I take so much time drawing is because I love that process so much that I actually don't want it to end. And that's why I continuously overwork my sketches, because I love doing it. So I just keep doing it. And then eventually I'm thinking, oh, I wish I'd stopped 10, 20 minutes earlier. But yeah, that's just how I seem to operate. But yeah, you've got much more of a short, you like the idea almost better than the execution, don't you, Tara?
Yeah.
But no, we've got Art Journal January, we've got Aqua January as well.
Aqua January?
Aqua January, which is using any water-based medium to create a piece of art on a daily basis.
Nice.
5-minute march. That was a really popular one last year, wasn't it?
Yeah,
really
that was brilliant. Yeah.
We have all sorts. Cartoon in June. We have
poetry, April Poet
challenges, and we do one which Tara loved, which was basically I made up this one because I was already doing it. So, which was Early Rise August. Remember I told you about? I started getting up an hour earlier every day to get more creative time in. And it made such a difference to how much I did that I decided I'd turn that into an actual challenge. And you did it, and you got loads more creative time in, didn't you?
Well, you tortured me by making me do that as a part of one of our podcasts. I would report back after 2 weeks, I think it was. I was so tired. I don't know about you, Mike, but if I know I've got to get up for something, and because it was sort of part of a challenge and I said I'd do it, my brain starts telling me way before. So it was waking me up at like 1 o'clock and saying, don't forget, you've got to get up at 6. Then it wake me up at 2 o'clock and it's like, oh, I'm so tired. I did get more done, but I was very tired.
Yeah, I started waking up earlier too, which I've been talking about. But it was tough for me for like the first week, and then I didn't wake up early for a week. And then I tried again, and then it was tough. But then you just get so tired by the end of your day that you just sleep right through it. And it's like the joy of waking up is a game changer too, because you're so excited to get those hours and to feel so good at the end of your day, like by getting that workout in or getting like all the stuff done and just feeling like that sense of relief of, okay, I've crossed things off of my plate, and just having that for the first time in like my life. It's just like, it makes it a lot easier. But it's not for everybody, for sure. It wasn't for me for a long time.
Do you prefer it that way? Because I actually preferred it that way. Whereas instead of being creative first thing in the morning, I'd rather clear the decks of other stuff and then be creative later.
No, because I have so many things that I could find to clear the decks up that I just need to pump out some kind of like writing or something. And then I feel like, okay, now I can go do whatever administrative stuff I have to do. And then that's a sense of relief too. But having that kind of creative thing under my belt first thing is just like, all right, like this day is mine. Like I've at least claimed it for myself and not the things that I got to do for other people or for these other projects that I've created for myself, you know?
Yeah. I mean, if I'm a morning I'm not a morning person at all, but my creativity, I always feel more creative in the morning than I do in the afternoon. So I feel like by scratching that creative itch first thing in the morning, I feel a lot better for the rest of the day because I've done what I want to do. But there are obviously people that are much better off. They prefer being creative in the afternoon. But in that case, what I would do then is I'd still get up an hour earlier. But like Tara said, I'd use that time to maybe do the household chores or prepare the dinner for later or something so that, I can use the time I would have spent on that later on to draw or paint. But I don't think it takes that long to get used to it, to be honest, because as I say, I did that thing, didn't I, where I started getting up an hour earlier and it was really, really hard for the first couple of months, really. But now I just automatically wake up at that time, and even if I wanted to lie in, I couldn't because I might as well be up. I'm awake.
Right, just wasting time.
Yeah. But it's just forming a habit, isn't it? Things take time to form. This whole kick in the creative thing is all about trying to form a creative habit, and it does take time, but you do get there eventually, and then it just becomes, part of your day.
Absolutely. And like we said with the morning thing or, drawing with your left hand or whatever it may be, you know that there's an end point to the challenge. So if you can just get through the 30 days, which people say is the way you form a habit, if you can at least put yourself through that and have that accomplishment of doing it, then you can let yourself off the hook if it's really not for you. Like by the end of 30 days, you'll know if it's something that you want to continue or not, or wait another month and then try it again. But you have to like actually get through the 30 days. You can't just give up after, day 5.
Yeah, I like that as well, because if you do the 30 days, you can then pivot, can't you, to something else. So you might find you like an aspect of something, but not all of it, or you might completely want to change, but you can still be creative, but it doesn't get repetitive to me by doing things that way.
Exactly.
Yeah, because you could get bored, can't you?
Yeah.
In fact, we only, last night, we only recorded a podcast episode talking about that, didn't we?
Yeah.
About, because obviously New Year coming up. We're recording this in, I don't even know what month it is. End of November. So obviously, that's that time, isn't it, where everyone's like, oh, I'm going to make a New Year's resolution for next year. And we were saying that actually the most people actually fail by February. And it's because they give themselves such a huge task and they don't really look at the reality of it, of what it entails, and also the willpower it takes to keep something up for so long. And actually sometimes it's better to set yourself a goal for a month and then change it for the next month and just do it in chunks rather than the whole 365-day thing. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Having that end point that's like tangible and close enough that you're like, okay, I can power through this. It's so key.
Yeah. And then you can change it up and do something a bit, something just to keep you from getting bored.
Right, exactly. Well, you have developed many different challenges yourself, and your solo episodes are some of my favorite, but you've also had some great guests on the show. I was wondering, did you have any favorite moments or favorite maybe lessons that you've learned from the various people that you've had on your podcast?
Well, every moment with you was obviously really special. But for me,
you were our favourite.
Yeah,
thank you.
Totally our favourite. But apart from that, and obviously a very small apart from that, we got our art heroes. We got our art heroes on the show, and that was part down to you. So thank you very much for that. Danny Gregory and John Bergerman. And prior to interviewing them, we'd got this running joke. I don't know if you heard, where every episode we did solo, we'd try and get their names in, didn't we, Sandra? We'd try and slot it in somewhere within the show. So
beforehand.
No, within the show.
Gotcha.
Within the show, somehow we had to try and get their names in or give them a mention.
It didn't start like that, though, did it? Because I think it so happened that it seemed that every episode we were ever doing together, they came up. And then one day one of us said, do you realise we haven't mentioned Danny Gregory or John Bergerman today? And then after that, we were like, right, we've got to talk about them every single week.
Which is slightly crazy. I mean, that was fantastic, wasn't it? Because they're so different for a start, those two guests, but both so inspiring. And you were incredibly nervous, weren't you, Sandra, when we had Danny Gregory on?
I was absolutely, because bear in mind, I'd never done an interview. I'd done one interview, I think, before then, and I was completely terrified because, well, he's an art idol. I just absolutely love his stuff, and I really admire him. So I was literally like a rabbit in the headlights, and I think one of the questions or two of the questions I asked him, I'm pretty sure took me about 10 minutes to get out. And I must have said it the same thing about 12 different ways in one sentence. And I had to edit this question down to the point where I was embarrassed listening back. I was thinking he must have thought I was an absolute lunatic. But it's just that I was terrified. I'm sure I'd be fine if I did it again now, but I think what's fascinating is it doesn't matter at whatever level these people are or how high their profile is, they all seem to have experienced the same struggles at one time or the other. Have you noticed that?
Oh, yeah. Everybody no matter what part of your journey you're on, like these things don't go away. Just like I can't stop saying just like 300 episodes in, I get nervous every time I talk to someone. I always feel like an imposter. All these people that you're talking to as well go through the same exact things.
I think the way we've tried, well, we always do it really, especially with our joint episodes, the one without a guest. We've made a point we'll only talk about things that we've experienced ourselves as creatives. So, for example, we've talked about things like how to deal with negative feedback or dealing with imposter syndrome or time management issues, things like that, things that most creatives struggle with from time to time. But there have been a couple of things where we thought that would be a good topic, and then we've realised that actually we haven't experienced it enough. We're not experts in that, so we're best not to talk about it because we don't want to come across as people who think we know everything about everything, because we absolutely don't. We're just sharing our own experiences and sharing the things that have helped us get over those struggles. I'll tell you who was a real who I really learned something from, and that was Jake Parker. When we interviewed Jake Parker, who does the Inktober challenge, we had him on, and he went into some detail. I think I'd asked him if he'd ever experienced a creative block. And I love asking that question. And the reason I ask it is because I suffer from them quite a lot. About 2 or 3 times a year, I suddenly just get a block. And he went into it in quite a lot of depth. And he was talking about a shallow block and what causes it. And then he was going on about a much deeper block and the things that can cause a deeper block. And when he was talking, I was actually going through a block at the time. And it was what he was saying made me realise, it almost made me understand what my block was about. And I would say within about 2 weeks of listening to that episode, I was completely over it because I'd been able to analyse what had been going on. So that was brilliant. He was amazing, I thought, Jake Parker. Don't you, Tara?
Well, can you remember what he said that triggered you to think about it?
Oh, God, I can't remember. He was talking about... that's right. He was talking about the shallow blocks are obviously things perhaps when your creative well has run dry, you've just been overdoing it, that sort of thing. Or, time's been an issue, you're procrastinating, a bit worried about the result, that kind of thing. And then I think he went on to talk about a much deeper block where maybe it's more to do with relationship issues, darker things that are going on in your life, financial things, all these kind of things. And there was lots of other things he went into. And I kind of realised that I had some shallow things going on, but I also had some much deeper things going on. We'd lost a couple of close people last year, a friend of ours, a very good friend of ours, who died young, and also my father-in-law who died. And I was thinking about all these things, thinking, this has been a really hard year. And also... And I realised I'd been feeling guilty for being in the studio because the studio is where I feel so happy and I love being in there so much. And I kind of felt that maybe I'd been feeling guilty for feeling good doing something when all these people around me were going through such terrible times. And I kind of got that from talking to Jake. And just being able to unravel that, it was almost like therapy. But it really helped. And now I sort of look at it in a much sort of deeper way. And we actually went on to do an episode on the creative block. And we actually spoke about Jake a lot in that and what things he'd said and the struggles we've had. So, yeah, we learn a lot from the guests. But like I say, the best thing, it sounds horrible. I don't mean the best thing. I don't mean to say that I love it when people have the same struggles as I do. I don't mean it like that. But I mean, it makes me feel like I'm not the only one and it's normal. And Tara, you always say, don't you? These things are just part of being a creative. It's part of a creative life is these struggles that we have.
Yeah, I tell you what as well, one of the guests, and I've completely forgotten his name. Do you remember you interviewed the guy who'd been on the painting competition?
Oh, Callum,
that was it.
Yeah. BBC Big Painting Challenge.
He was on our show and I absolutely loved, because I didn't do that episode. I think I was away or something. And it gave me chills down my spine. He was talking about how he started painting and was it Australia he'd been to, Sandra?
Yeah.
And was it an Aboriginal woman or something came up to him and he bought a painting off them, and then she told him that he was meant to paint or something. And I just remember hearing this story, and then he went back and started painting because of what this person said to him. And that is almost like, to me, it was almost like fate, even though I don't really sort of believe that much. It was just a chilling kind of,
You love that story.
Yeah,
Mike.
I did,
You should get him on because he did this. You obviously don't get it in America. I presume you can't get BBC in America, but yeah, we have this program over here called the Big Painting Challenge. And I'd say Callum was very much like me in that we both paint in a very meticulous way, but, be that good or bad, but that's how we approach our painting. And this Big Painting Challenge, what it does is it makes the artists do these most bizarre challenges like painting with a mop and just things that are so way off of what you'd normally do. Now, because he didn't actually win, I think he was a finalist, but the reason I wanted to interview him is because I related to him so much and I thought he was so brave to do what he did, because it just wasn't his thing to paint like that. And there were some people that could paint really well with a mop, but he was not one of them. And I couldn't possibly, and every time he did something that I thought, that looks good, the judge would come along and say, no, you need to lunge, you need to scrub at it. And of course I understood what he wanted to do. So I wanted to interview him, and he had this amazing story about how he started. But funny enough, I've kept in contact with him since. We sort of via Instagram and whatever. And the paintings he's been doing since then, because one of the things he said in the interview was that I said to him, has it changed you as an artist? Has it loosened you up? And he said, no, because that's not who I am. And I was really full of admiration for him to stick into his guns and being who he feels comfortable being. And he's doing a painting at the moment. It's Peaky Blinders inspired. And it's, and in front of this sort of Peaky Blinders scene, he's got all this glass, like a bottle of Jim Beam, I think it's whiskey or something like that. And this painting is just spectacular. It really is. But if you'd watched that program, you'd never have believed that he was actually as good as he actually is. So it was really good. So you should get him on.
Okay, definitely. I'll add him to the list.
Mm.
Yeah, isn't that great though? Like, it's kind of like a selfish thing. Like, I do the podcast for other people, and I want to like bring out moments or pieces of advice or stories from the guests that hopefully will relate to or help the people listening. But then when you get those moments where it's like, oh, this is exactly what I needed to hear at this moment for this particular thing that I'm going through, it's like such a joy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
definitely. I think that's what happened with the whole Jake thing. He said that at a time when I really needed to hear it.
And kind of like we were talking about before with like the butterfly effect, like if these conversations are having such a profound effect on you or changing your life, who knows what it's doing for all the people listening that you'll never hear about. Like, oh, the thing that, either your guest said or Tara said or Sandra said right now changed my day, my week, my month, my life even, is like the exact thing that you needed to hear. So it's it's fun to think about, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's funny as well because you sometimes think you know what, because you get obviously some messages from people, but then you might get a message from someone they've been listening for ages. And they'll suddenly say, oh, I've been listening. Like we had a message the other day, I don't know if you saw it, Sandra. And it was a woman, she said, I haven't posted anything in the group, but I've been listening and I'm feeling inspired and I've created a poster. I've started a little design business. I've created a poster and I just wanted to show you. So she just sent it privately. But, you know, if she hadn't got the guts up to do that, nobody would ever know about that. And yet you are having an effect on her still.
Exactly.
I love it when we hear things like that. I really do. Those little things, you know, when you've made a difference to someone, it's kind of heartwarming, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. It's like the fuel. And the same thing with your challenges, like the person that said, oh no, I need these roles. Like it's like one thing to, you know, have the challenge there for motivation to have a reason to create something, but then you realize, oh, this is actually important for a different reason to somebody else. It's so uplifting.
Yeah, definitely. That's the right word.
I definitely think as well with the group, it's not just about the challenges. It's about all these people coming together and, you know, like we said, you find people online that are kind of like you. I think that's what's happening in our group. There's definitely friendships being formed in there as well.
Right. Building an army.
Something like that.
Yeah, we've had some people collaborating as well, haven't we?
Yeah.
We have people sort of saying, oh, you know, there was one in particular. There was a girl on the group and she was going through a creative block. And she said, you know, I'm feeling really fed up. I don't know what to draw. And she'd actually been really drawing a lot, hadn't she? But suddenly she'd just come up against a brick wall and she posted about it. And there was another girl in the group who is into the poetry sort of stuff. So she followed that by writing a poem, which she posted to the group. And it was actually written to the other girl who had the block.
Nice.
But it was really clever how she'd done it because she had written this poem saying, you know, about the girl with the block and all the things that she could draw in this real poetic way, which really inspired the girl with the block because she then came back and had drawn every single thing in that poem on a spread, and it was great. So it was lovely. It was really nice that one person had seen another person and just encouraged them and inspired them, and you know that kind of thing is what we love about our group, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we had that happen the other way around as well, didn't we? So I remember seeing someone had done a drawing of some sort of animal, which I can't remember, and then that inspired one of the poets in the group to write a poem, and then they ended up putting their work together to make like a collaborative piece, which I think is so cool because they wouldn't have existed without those people coming together in the group.
Yeah.
So nice. And it's like you said, it's hard to find those people in real life. So when you can have a group where, especially a closed group where, you know, it's not like being leaked out into the internet or whatever, when you can kind of be vulnerable and also ask for advice, you know, to have a group there where you can be like, hey, what do you think about this? Just to get that kind of reassurance that, okay, yeah, maybe you could tweak this or maybe rethink this, or no, it's perfect. You're good. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, constructive criticism, I think, is a good thing.
Absolutely.
We had something the other day, I remember, and a woman posted on behalf of her daughter, and her daughter had been getting horrible comments, I think, from her art teacher that was kind of completely putting off art, and everybody stepped in, and they were all talking about their experiences, and quite a few of them were now like people who sold their art, and yet they'd had similar things happen. Maybe art teachers had told them they were no good, or people in the past told them, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, you're no good. I think one of them had even ended up becoming an art teacher, which just shows you that nobody really knows, and nobody should really discount you or tell you you can't do something.
I hear that such a lot as well.
Yeah.
From art.
It's shocking, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's one of the things that grinds my gears on this podcast is hearing people talk about, you know, that art teacher that gave them the bad advice or just disheartened them for years.
Yeah, I had one, but not at school. But yeah, and I definitely can relate to it. But but I think, you know, I was an adult by then. But when you're a child, I think you're so, or you know, a young teenager, especially when your confidence is so low, I think you're so impressionable then and so vulnerable to those kind of comments. So it's such a shame that a lot of people don't seem to understand what kind of effect that can have on someone. And it is a real shame.
And who's to know either? I mean, if you see someone's art, it might just be that they don't like that type of art. It's not that it's no good. And even like you get big artists, selling work that I absolutely can't stand. And I think it's complete rubbish. You probably do as well, Sandra. But they sell this work. So who's to say what's good and bad anyway?
It's just taste. That's
Right.
all. It's all about taste. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't like realism, and there's a lot of people that don't like abstract. And that's the thing about art. You can't please everybody. You really can't. And it's like music. It's like anything. I mean, I cannot stand heavy metal. I'd rather rip my eardrums out than have to listen to it. But I know other people that just love it, and they really get something from that. So we are all different, and I think that's what's so great. It's such a diverse thing, as it's so subjective art. You can't possibly, nothing can ever please everybody. So the best person you can please is yourself. And as long as you're enjoying what you're creating, the people who are similar to you will enjoy it with you. And it doesn't really matter about anyone else, because they'll look for someone else to enjoy.
Absolutely. That is what it is all about.
Yeah.
Guys, this has been awesome. Let's wrap this up, though, with the final push. Do one or both of you want to give the final push today?
Go on, Sandra, you do yours.
Well, I'm sure you've got one as well.
Go on then. Okay, I've got one. So for me, it would be that even 5 or 10 minutes is enough to do something creative. It could be do a quick sketch, draft a few words for your story, or start writing a poem. So don't waste those small moments just because you think you haven't got time.
Yeah, and I would just say start, because every day that you don't start is a day further away from getting where you want to be. And also never, ever think it's too late to start, because it's not. And one thing I've learned this year is that you can be 30 and only have, 5 years left in you, or you could be 80 and have 20 years left in you. You don't know how long you've got. So it's never too late. Just do it. And finally, if you can't draw, that doesn't mean that you can't learn to draw. It's something everybody can learn. You just have to want it enough.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
No, I love it. And for people that want to challenge themselves, where should they start? Should they go to the website, kickingthecreatives.com, or should they just start listening to the podcast, or should they join the Facebook group, or should they do all the above? What would you suggest?
I'd say all the above. The
Yes.
Facebook group is definitely a place. If they like interacting, they like sharing work and being there with other creative people, definitely the Facebook group is a great place to be.
Not to be mixed up with the page, because we've got a group and a page. The group's different.
Right. So they'll have to click join and maybe wait a second to be approved, right?
Yeah.
The website is the place to go to find out what's coming up. And we've also got a newsletter, and the newsletter isn't just to junk your email box up with rubbish. It's basically, if you sign up to that, what you get is advance notice of the challenges coming up for the following month. And so that's worth signing up for if you're interested in doing those things.
Excellent. All right. So we will also have that linked up at today's show notes page, yourcreativepush.com/318. That's where they can find everything we talked about today, as well as where they can find you all. And also Sandra and Tara's websites will be there for you to check out if you want to check them out as well. Guys, this was such a pleasure. I've been looking forward to this for a really long time, and I'm really, really proud of you for spending the year making this, not just this awesome podcast and kind of resource for people to find challenges, but the wonderful community that you've built. I think it's such a gift to the creative community, and I would just encourage everybody that listens to this podcast to join that group as well, to just have other like-minded people like that you can bounce ideas around and also challenge each other. So thank you so much for coming on the show and for doing what you're doing. I love you guys. I really do.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. It's been lovely talking to you as always, Mike.
It's been great fun. It really has. And so thanks for having us.
Of course. Thanks for doing it. And maybe one day we will meet in real life too.
Well, that'd be cool.
That would be great, wouldn't it?
Let's do it. But for now, I guess we'll just see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Such a pleasure talking with those two. I can't wait to get them back on the podcast to see how things go next year. But I just love the way that things come together. And I don't want to speak for them. Well, they kind of did speak for themselves in this episode, but just the way that things came together for them. Meeting via this podcast, and then collaborating in different ways. First on the Idea Medic, something that Tara had already started, allowing Sandra to kind of infiltrate that, and then realizing through their new audience that people wanted more of them together, that people actually wanted these collaborations and experiments that they were just doing for fun, like drinking and drawing. People wanted them. So then they get the idea to create their own thing. Why not make their own podcast, their own website, their own community? And now look at them. They have a community of people that are starting their own things. So it's just so inspiring for me and hopefully encouragement to you to not think about the end result of things, to not think of, if I jump on a phone conversation with this person that I met in a community, or hell, even just joining a community to start to talk to other people, not worrying about what the end result of that could be. It's just putting yourself out there and starting something, even if that is just a friendship with somebody. And I also just wanted to encourage you, whether you do it through Kicking the Creatives or not, challenge yourself. Find challenges that put yourself out there out in the outer space that take you so far away from your resistances that you're not even thinking about them. Put yourself in awkward and weird positions to try something new, or to draw in public, or to use your non-dominant hand, or anything else that takes you out of your current mindset, and stick to those challenges. Something new and unique will come out of that, I promise you, but you will have no idea what it will be until you put yourself in that position. Again, I highly encourage you to go to kickingthecreatives.com to check out what Sandra and Tara are up to now, and join in on one of their challenges. On our next episode, we have John Guido. John is a New York City artist and illustrator who makes these beautiful alternative movie posters. And he comes on the show next week to talk about specifically his process of making the 10-year anniversary poster for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I've seen this thing. Actually, these things, they're beautiful, they're awesome, and he came on for a really great discussion about his creative process. If you want to find out more about John or check out his work, you can head to his Instagram, Twitter, and Tumblr. He is John Guido, JohnGuido. Or you can head to today's show notes page, where we'll have everything with Tara and Sandra linked up, not just Kicking the Creatives, but their own personal websites, yourcreativepush.com/318. But that's all I've got for you today. So hopefully you were inspired to go and get your work done. So go and get it done. Start off 2019 in a great way. I love you all so much. It's going to be a great creative year for you. I know it. Get some amazing work done, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Never miss a push. Head to yourcreativepush.com/subscribe to find the easiest way for you to subscribe to the podcast.